The microphone hit the desk with a dull thud. Johnny Carson's hand had dropped it. Not placed it. Dropped it. His eyes were locked on a single piece of paper, a white envelope torn open at the corner, the kind that arrives in the afternoon mail and changes everything. Behind him, Doc Severinsen froze mid-note, trumpet still raised. The band went silent. Ed McMahon leaned forward in his chair, confused, concerned. The audience of 300 people stopped breathing. Carson lifted his other hand. A slow, deliberate gesture toward the control booth. Cut the music. Cut everything. The studio lights felt heavier now. No laughter track. No applause cue. Just silence, stretching across stage 1 at NBC Burbank like a held breath that wouldn't release. He looked up. Not at the camera. At the audience. At a man in the third row, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, who had been laughing 30 seconds ago and was now gripping the armrest of his seat like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Carson stopped mid-monologue. The entire studio froze. This wasn't the show anymore. This was something else. Something no producer could script. No director could cut. No audience could prepare for. And for the next 11 minutes, 15 million people across America would witness what happens when television stops pretending and becomes real. How did we get here? 22 minutes earlier, Johnny Carson had walked onto the set of The Tonight Show the way he'd done 4,000 times before. Same entrance. Same wave. Same effortless smile that made it look easy, even when it wasn't. The audience erupted. The band hit the opening notes. Ed McMahon delivered the iconic introduction with that booming voice that had become as familiar as a neighbor's greeting. But tonight felt different. Carson sat behind the desk, adjusted his tie, glanced at the cue cards stacked beside the guest chair. Monologue first. Then a sketch. Then the guests. Standard format. Predictable rhythm. Except there was a note tucked under the top cue card. Handwritten. From the stage manager. Letter came for you during rehearsal. Marked urgent. It's on your desk. Carson had seen it before the show started. A plain white envelope. No return address. Just his name, typed in all caps. Johnny Carson. The Tonight Show. NBC Burbank. He'd opened it in his dressing room. Read the first 2 lines. Then folded it back into the envelope and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He told himself he'd deal with it after the taping. After the applause. After the cameras stopped rolling. But halfway through the monologue, as he delivered a punchline about the president's latest press conference, he saw the man in the flannel shirt. Third row center. Laughing louder than anyone else. Clapping between jokes. The kind of audience member every performer dreams of. And then Carson remembered the letter. The man in the flannel shirt was named Tom. He didn't know Johnny Carson personally. Had never met him. Never written to him. Never asked for anything. But 3 weeks ago, Tom's wife had sent a letter to NBC. A long, handwritten note explaining that her husband was dying. Stage 4 cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And his one wish, the only thing he wanted before the end, was to sit in the audience of The Tonight Show and hear Johnny Carson make him laugh one more time. The letter had arrived too late for a response. By the time it reached Carson's desk, Tom's wife had already passed away. Heart attack. Sudden. Unexpected. Tom had been alone for 2 weeks now. Facing the end without her. But he'd kept the tickets she'd bought. 2 seats. Third row center. He came anyway. Because she would have wanted him to. Because laughter was the only thing left that didn't hurt. Carson didn't know any of this when he started the monologue. He'd only read the first 2 lines of the letter in his dressing room. Dear Mr. Carson, my name is Helen. My husband is dying, and he wants to hear you tell one more joke. But now, looking at Tom's face in the third row, laughing like the world wasn't ending, Carson felt something crack open inside his chest. A fissure that couldn't be ignored. A weight that couldn't be carried alone. He stopped mid-sentence. The punchline died on his lips. His hand, holding the microphone, lowered slowly to the desk. The audience thought it was a bit at first. A pause for effect. But then they saw his face. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Doc Severinsen caught the shift immediately. His trumpet came down. He turned to the band, gave a quick, silent gesture. Stop. The music faded. The stage manager in the wings grabbed his headset, barking into the microphone. What's happening? Johnny, you okay? Ed McMahon leaned over the desk. Johnny? Carson didn't answer. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the envelope, and set it on the desk between them. His fingers traced the edge of the paper. Worn. Folded. Read and reread. Then he stood up. The audience shifted. Confused murmurs rippled through the seats. Carson walked out from behind the desk. No cue cards. No script. Just him and 300 people who had no idea what was about to happen. He walked down the 3 steps that separated the stage from the audience. His eyes never left Tom. Backstage, he made a choice no producer would have ever allowed. Carson stopped in front of the 3rd row. Tom looked up, eyes wide, still gripping the armrest. For a moment neither of them spoke. The cameras kept rolling. The crew held their breath. Tom? Carson's voice was quiet. Almost a whisper. But in the silence of the studio, it carried like a prayer. Tom nodded. His throat tight. His hands shaking. Your wife, Carson said. Helen. She wrote to me. Tom's face collapsed. Not in sadness. In recognition. In the kind of raw, unguarded emotion that only comes when someone sees you. Really sees you. Not the version you show the world. The version you hide. The one that's breaking. Carson knelt down. Right there in the aisle. Eye level with Tom. The cameras zoomed in, but this wasn't for the cameras anymore. This was for Tom. And for Helen. And for every person watching who'd ever lost someone and didn't know how to keep going. She told me. Carson continued, his voice steady but soft. That you wanted to laugh. That laughter was the thing you needed most. And she was right. Because laughter isn't just joy, Tom. It's survival. It's the sound we make when the world tries to break us and we refuse to stay broken. Tom's shoulders shook. Silent sobs. The kind that come from a place too deep for sound. Carson reached out. Took Tom's hand. Held it. The audience was crying now too. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. The way people cry when they witness something sacred. I can't fix what's happening to you, Carson said. I can't bring her back. I can't make the pain go away. But I can tell you this. You're not alone. Not tonight. Not in this room. And not out there. He gestured toward the cameras. Toward the 15 million people watching from living rooms and hospital beds and kitchen tables across the country. Every single person watching right now knows what it feels like to lose something. To face something impossible. And they're all sitting with you right now, Tom. All of us. Together. The silence in the studio was absolute. No one moved. No one coughed. No one checked their watch. Time had stopped. Or maybe it had just slowed down enough to matter. But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. Carson stood up slowly. He reached into his pocket again, pulled out a pen, and walked back to his desk. He picked up the envelope, Helen's letter, and wrote something on the back. Then he folded it carefully, walked back to Tom, and placed it in his hands. This is yours, Carson said. It was always yours. But I want you to keep it. And when the hard days come, when it feels like you can't take another step, I want you to open it and remember that Helen knew something the rest of us forget. That love doesn't end when someone leaves. It just changes shape. And sometimes it sounds like laughter. Tom held the envelope like it was made of glass. His hands trembling. His face wet with tears. But when he looked up at Carson, there was something else there too. Not just grief. Not just loss. But gratitude. The kind that doesn't need words. Carson nodded once. Then he turned back toward the stage, climbed the 3 steps, and sat down behind his desk. He picked up the microphone. Took a breath. And when he spoke again, his voice was clear. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you the funniest story I know. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary." The cameras cut to commercial. The stage lights dimmed. And in the 3rd row, Tom sat holding the envelope, reading the words Johnny Carson had written on the back. "You laughed tonight. That means you're still here. Keep laughing. She's listening." The show resumed 10 minutes later. Carson delivered the sketch. Introduced the guests. Told jokes that landed harder than they ever had before. Because the audience wasn't just watching a performance anymore. They were participating in something bigger. A shared acknowledgement that life is brutal and beautiful and impossibly short, and the only way through it is together. The cameras captured something else too. Small moments that would become legendary. Doc Severinsen wiping his eyes between trumpet notes. Ed McMahon's voice cracking slightly when he read the next cue card. An audience member in the back row standing up, not to leave, but to applaud. Then another. Then the entire studio, rising to their feet in silent tribute to a man they'd never met but somehow knew. Carson let the applause wash over them. He didn't stop it. Didn't rush it. He understood what it meant. This wasn't for him. It was for Tom. For Helen. For everyone watching who'd ever needed permission to feel everything all at once. When the taping ended, Tom stayed in his seat. The audience filed out, but he didn't move. Carson came down from the stage one more time, sat beside him, and they talked. Not for the cameras. Not for the crew. Just 2 men, sitting in the 3rd row of a television studio, talking about loss and love and the strange, stubborn refusal to give up. They talked for 40 minutes. About Helen's favorite songs. About the trips they'd planned but never taken. About the small, ordinary moments that become extraordinary only after they're gone. Carson shared stories too. About his own losses. The things he'd learned about grief. That it doesn't get smaller. You just get stronger at carrying it. 3 months later, Tom passed away. Quietly. At home. Holding the envelope Carson had given him. But before he died, he wrote one more letter. Not to Carson. To his daughter. In it he described that night. The laughter. The tears. The moment when a man on television stopped being a host and became a friend. And at the end of the letter he wrote this. "I don't know if Johnny Carson will ever read this. But I need him to know that he gave me something I didn't think I could have again. Hope. Not the kind that pretends everything will be okay. The kind that says, even when it's not okay, you're not alone." Carson never spoke publicly about that night. He didn't need to. The people who were there remembered. The 15 million people who watched at home remembered. And somewhere, in the archives of NBC, there's a tape of a television show that stopped being a show and became a moment. A moment when one man's grief met another man's compassion, and for 11 minutes, the world paused to witness what it means to be human. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Years later, when Carson retired from The Tonight Show, journalists asked him about his legacy. About the interviews. The sketches. The monologues. He deflected most of the questions with humor, the way he always did. But when one reporter asked him about the night he stopped the show, his face changed. "That wasn't about me," Carson said. "That was about Tom. And Helen. And every person who's ever turned on a television because they needed to feel less alone. That's what this job was always supposed to be. Not entertainment. Connection." The envelope Tom held that night, the one Carson had written on, was framed and donated to the Smithsonian Institution after Tom's death. His daughter insisted. She said her father would have wanted people to see it. To know that even in the hardest moments, kindness still exists. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop, listen, and remind someone that they matter. The words Carson wrote are still there, preserved under glass. You laughed tonight. That means you're still here. Keep laughing. She's listening. It's a simple sentence, but it contains everything Johnny Carson understood about his job, about television, about life. That laughter isn't escape. It's survival. And sometimes, when the world feels too heavy to bear, the greatest act of courage is to sit in the third row of a studio, hold an envelope, and laugh one more time. Because Helen was listening. And so were we. That night taught America something it had forgotten. That television could be more than distraction. It could be medicine. And Johnny Carson, the man who made millions laugh, showed us that sometimes the greatest act of compassion is simply stopping everything to sit with someone's pain. The envelope still hangs in the Smithsonian. A reminder that kindness, witnessed by millions, can outlive us all.